I was asked this week a very, very interesting question that I thought I would just throw out to you today. The question that was asked to me is, Pastor, is there a special series that you've ever done that you would say is your favorite? And the answer to that was, it's the one that I'm currently in. That's really the truth. I don't know if I have felt more anxious, although I'm sure I have, about a time in which we have walked through something that seems so simplistic, and I know it has for you. I'm not trying to belittle your wisdom or your intelligence in any way. I knew that going into this series that there would be, of course, that's the truth, coming from your lips, from your heart. And I understand that. But sometimes the most simple things in our life are the hardest for us to get a hold of. And that's the reason why we've been speaking about this topic, about fixing our eyes on this person of Jesus, because we often don't. So we've been asking this question over the last 2 weeks, and today will be the last week for this. And I had to honestly be serious when I say that today is going to be the hard one, because what I'm going to talk about today is a subject that is going to get me in trouble. And that's okay too. It's a subject that once we talk about, you're going to say, Pastor, I never heard anybody talk about faith like that. And then some of you are going to hold back and wait for a little while, and then you're going to email me and explain even in more detail about why you've never heard it talked like that. And that's okay, because we can have dialogue that way. But my fear is that for many, many years, you've heard messages about what faith is, and it's made it more confusing than it really is. So this morning, we're going to talk about that. But the one question that we have been talking about that's not confusing is a question that I've asked each and every week, and that simple question is this. So what are the questions that you think about? What is it that you wonder about on a daily basis? When you're sitting there in your house and you're thinking about things, or you're driving along in your car and you're going to work, there are just some questions that you just simply ask yourself over and over again. Maybe not over and over again in the same day, but it seems like it comes up on a regular basis. You're thinking about that something. And I'm not saying these things to tell you that these are the most important things in my life, but there are some things that I do think about on a regular basis. And you probably have your list too. And I'm just going to give you just a few of my own. The first one is this. Why not do the healthy thing even though I think about my health all the time? Why don't I do the healthy thing even though I'm thinking about my health all the time? And then I go to a festival in Middlebury and have a pork chop dinner. Oh yes, I'm not, don't judge me. A pork burger, and a pretzel. Was it good? Yes, it was very good. But it was too good and too much for that one little journey that I was on. Why is it that when I think about my health so much, why don't I do the healthy thing, even though I think about it all the time? I think about things like this. How can I watch the Steelers every Sunday live without paying $400 and some bucks for a game pass that allows me to watch it? Do it legally too, by the way. So that's to make a point there. I think about that during the football season when I'm having to watch your Colts every single Sunday. I'm not bitter. I'm just saying. It could be the Bears too. I'm very open and wide to all the others too. I think about what heaven is like. Have you ever think about heaven? Can I just tell you, the older I get, the more I think about heaven. I think about John's description of heaven in Revelation. I think, oh, he tried so very hard to articulate what heaven was like. And you know that he could not muster up, to give us the clarity of what heaven really is. But yet, what he gave us was such a beautiful picture. And I think to myself, oh, John, I know you gave it your best shot, but I can only wonder what heaven really looks like. I'm anxious for that day to come. And everything that we do, we have this frame of reference, and we've been talking about that. Our frame of reference that we look through, it's the way that we judge everything. It's the way that we look at our belief system. And so if you come from a background where your family was all about scientific information and knowledge, then for you, it was all about, can I prove it? For some of you, you grew up in a home where it was kind of religious. You went to church on Sunday. Maybe your parents didn't really, believe everything that they saw or heard, but you did because you were young. And as you got a little older, you started hearing other things from other people. And all of a sudden, that faith that you once had, that was once your frame of reference that you looked through, now you have questions about, and you're wondering, is it really true? For some of you, you grew up in a place where parents and others around you said, look, it's just fate. Things just happen. There's no rhyme or reason. It just happens that way. You can't say that there's a plan, that there's a will, there's something that's going on in the world that dictates it. It's just fate. Some people call it karma, and I hate that word. What comes around goes around. Is the way you live, is the way you're going to, boy, there are good people who get shafted a lot. So if that's karma, man, something's wrong with that too. But for some of us, we grew up in a background. We just simply believe that Jesus is Lord and there's something about him. And as Christians, this is the craziest thing about us as Christians, right? God came into the world to clarify the things for us that we do not understand. Not all of them, but to clarify some of the things that you and I have questions about. If you wonder why Jesus came, he came to be that frame of reference for you and for me. Although we look at other things and other areas as our frame of reference, and Jesus says, here it is, it's me. And the wonderful thing is that in spite of what we don't know, in spite of what we will never know, here's the good news. We can know that we stand with him. We can know that he is our Lord and our Savior. And that is the promise, and that's the reason why he came. In fact, the writer of Hebrews, which we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks, as he wrote this wonderful sermon, this long sermon to the Hebrews who were struggling in their faith and wondering about what was going to happen next because they were being persecuted left and right, he says these wonderful little phrases that I just can't get away from, and I hope that you've underlined them in your Bible because they're worth keeping, worth remembering when you get in trouble and you're wondering about why is the world and why are things happening and why do bad things happen to good people and why do babies die early and all those other questions that we have, and they're legitimate questions. This is what the writer of Hebrews says. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, he says simply this: fixing our eyes on Jesus. At the end of the day, the songs that we just sang together, talking about the cross, talking about what he did for us so that we might have life, it's always been about that. Jesus dying on the cross for you and for me is about what you and I are to fix our eyes on, the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith. And there is going to be things in your life that is going to be a distraction to you. There are things that you will never ever know, but there will be life experiences that just don't add up, and we've already had those. You've experienced those, and so have I. But at the end of the day, we're to fix our eyes on Jesus, the perfecter of our faith, the person of who Jesus is, not the church. The church is a good thing. I hope you never misunderstand when I speak about that. But listen, if you're fixing your eyes on the church, it will let you down. If you fix your eyes on a person like myself, I'm going to let you down. But can I tell you that Jesus, he's never going to let you down. And you can fix your eyes on all different kinds of things. Your circumstances, and I hate that part because sometimes we're in the middle of bad times and bad situations and we equate Jesus with our circumstances. And that's just not so. He says, look, you're going to have those moments. No one was promised that your walk with Jesus was going to be easy. But in the midst of your walk, put your eyes on Jesus. Now, this is what I said at the beginning of the series, right? This seems like such a simple message, right? It seems like, well, Pastor, we know this already. Why are you spending 3 weeks talking about it? Because let me ask you, how many of you have found your faith wandering? Or you found yourself wondering? And by the way, sometimes wondering leads to wandering. And when we wander, we begin to wonder, is this thing really real? Is this faith that I've had all these years, is it really right? And I just want you to know that if you've been wandering, and you're not going to raise your hand and say, Pastor, that's me today. Or maybe you're thinking about wandering, or maybe you know somebody who has wandered. Can I tell you that this message is for all of us? It's a way for you and I to use what we're about to hear this morning as a way to be an effective witness, to help others who go through the struggles that we all go through in life. So we think about wandering. We think about those who have wandered. And maybe you're struggling even to believe what was once so valuable to you. And I get that. But don't look at circumstances. Don't look at your finances and relationships and all those other things. They're not equal to Jesus. It's always about Jesus. So this morning, that's what I want us to talk about. I want us to talk about that one thing that we get so confused about. This thing that we call faith. And I know that for so many of us, we have this idea of what faith is and what faith does. And I think that I am guilty of this, and I think many others are guilty of this, that we have made the idea of what faith is very blurry. I think that faith is very simple, and we've made it very hard. So this morning, I want to push back, and I hope that I pray that through this message this morning that I think is right from the heart of God, that wherever our faith has been and wherever our faith is leading us, it'll be directed in the right kind of faith. There's faith in things, but there's one faith that we've got to get right. So would you bow your heads right now? Would you just bow your heads and let's pray and let's just ask the Spirit, oh Father, would you speak to our hearts right now? Father, would you just draw near to us even right now? Father, would you help us to look at that thing that we have spoken about so many times in our life as we have testified to others about faith and what faith is to us, that Lord, that maybe perhaps we've used that word the wrong way for a long time. And I pray, Father, that even this morning, that Lord, that you, not myself, but you, Lord, would be so clear to us today about faith and what it really means. Father, we ask that your Spirit do what only you can do. Teach us today. Help us today, Lord, I pray. Amen. So let me ask you, when you think about faith, what was that faith that you lost? If you found yourself drifting, if you found yourself going down that path, what was that faith that you lost? What was that faith that perhaps that you're losing? Or what is that faith that you know that somebody else had that they lost? What was it that they were faithful with or they trusted in that no longer is their faith anymore? That sounds kind of silly to even talk about it quite like that, but it's important. I want to talk about this one obstacle, which is faith. This obstacle that I pray that reconnects us with that faith in Jesus rather than faith in other things, okay? So today, this is what I want to promise you ahead of time, okay? Because just let me give you kind of a preliminary statement before we even go any further. Because of faith, I don't want you to stay here today, and I don't want you to think today that you have to pretend that things are better than they are, okay? So I don't want you to just pretend like, well, I'm all good and everything's better than this, and I'm not going to bring up stuff because then that hinders my faith. I don't want you to pretend that things are better than they are. So don't feel like you have to go there, okay? I don't want you to feel like you have to ignore the things that you're going through in this life. You don't have to ignore the questions that you have either. I don't want you to stop asking questions. Because if you think that hinders your faith, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. There's nothing wrong with understanding that life is life and you're going through a tough time. That is okay. Because it wasn't like that in the beginning either. Because people back in Jesus' day went through the exact same things that you're going through. The same things that I'm going through. They were going through days that were not easy. They were going through days that were really tough. And there were questions that they had that they just didn't have answers for. It wasn't like they were trying to dispute Jesus. They just had questions and they wondered about the answers to those questions. So what is faith? What is faith? Let's talk about that this morning. If you have your notes out this morning, would you go ahead and grab them real quick and let's talk about that today. Before I start talking about what faith is, can we just get some things out of the way this morning about what faith is not? Let's just start there. In your notes, would you just kind of at the very top of your pages, this is not faith. Okay, make that kind of your heading. I've got a couple things this morning that I think that we get wrapped up into, that you probably got wrapped into, or you had people in your life who taught this to you, okay? But let me be very clear that this is not what faith is today. Faith is not a force, and it is not a power, okay? Faith is not a force and it's not a power. It is not this magical rope that we just hang it around the neck of God and say, okay, God, and now this is what I want you to do, and you do it. It's not where you get around a room of people who are in a hospital around someone you love, and because you prayed really loud and you prayed really strong, that God didn't come through, and then you say to yourself, wait a minute, but we prayed hard and we prayed powerfully. Why was it? These were godly men and these were godly women that stood around that bed, and it didn't happen. God didn't show up. And I wonder if he even cares, right? We have an idea that if we just pray, and we pray strong enough, and we have enough faith that people will be healed. And you know that's not true, because God's will is God's will. You know what that's called? It's called magic. And this is not about magic. This is about a person, and that's Jesus. Here's the second thing that it is not. It is not a formula, okay? It's not this secret deep code that only deep thinkers have figured it out. You know, the author of Hebrews, he tells us what this faith is, and faith is just something that is not the reason why. I know this sounds bad. Faith is not the reason why we follow Jesus. Oh, hold on a minute. Are you serious, Pastor? Let's look at that together this morning, because this is huge. Hebrews chapter 11, beginning with verse 1, he even gives us the definition of what faith is. So look at that with me. Here's the definition for faith from the writer of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 1. Now faith, he says, is confidence in what we hope for. Now all of a sudden, we've got faith, and now we've got this new word that pops up, and that's hope. So what is hope? So write this down in your notes if you would. Hope is wanting something to be with no guarantee. Hope is wanting something to be with no guarantee. This is what we hope for. That's kind of an idea of what hope is. You hope that you get a raise. You hope that you get married. You hope that she goes out on a date with you. This is what you hope. And then he goes on, and understand, he almost cuts this off. He doesn't have much to say about it, but he just kind of gives the whole thing to us. He says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance, and here's another word that we got to look at, assurance about what we do not see. So if you would, and I don't have this on Media Shop, but I want you to, if you would, please just write this down in your notes. So if we could combine these two things together, this hope and this assurance, or confidence, you could use the word confidence, is this. Faith happens, okay, so write this down. Faith happens when hope so becomes confident that something will be so. Let me say it to you again. Faith happens when I hope so becomes confident that something will be so. Now, right now you're saying, Pastor, you're making this more confusing than anybody else that I've ever heard talk about faith. So hang on tight. Let me say it one more time. You need to hear this. Don't miss this part, okay? Faith happens when hope so becomes confident that something will be so. You got it? You got that written down? We're going to come back to that. So, now, what do we do with that? It is not a name it and claim it, by the way. Can I just make sure that we're clear about that? Because it sounds kind of like that, right? I hope so, and it comes to that point where I believe that it will be so. So if I pray, I know it's going to happen because I'm hoping for it, and then I'm confident that it's going to happen. No, that's not it. So let me give you an example real quick as we get into God's Word this morning. How do you know if you're going to get a raise? Let's just stop and ask that question. Here's the question. You hope so, but how do you know that you're going to get a raise? Do you go home one night and just say to your spouse, honey, I know I'm going to get a raise. Well, how do you know? I don't know. I know I'm hoping for it, so therefore I'm going to get a raise, right? That's how some people think. No, you know that's not true. You know that you're going to get a raise when your boss comes to you and says, oh, by the way, I'm going to give you a raise. Hope so happens when he gives it to you, or the promise is given to you that you're going to get a raise. That's hoping, and that is the confirmation because of the promise. Not hoping and saying, oh, and I just know it's going to happen. It's not a hope in something, it's a hope in, by the way, someone. And that's what we're going to see. Now, I know that it's strange, and I know so far you're a little confused. I can see it by the look on your face. So let me give you a definition that we can play with from here on out as we look into God's Word. Faith is simply this. Confidence, God is, that's our hope. And who do we put our hope in? We put it in God. Confidence is God is and will do what he promises to do. That's it. If you want to know what faith is, it's God's confidence. It's confidence God is. That's our hope. and will do what he promises to do. That's faith. That is it. It doesn't have to be deeper. The writer of Hebrew, he tells us this, and then he just kind of leaves it there. And it's like, you should know this. We should understand this. We do not believe God because of faith. We do not believe God is because of faith, do we? We do not believe God keeps his promises because of faith. We believe God because of the evidence that we have. You and I stand here today, and you and I don't just we're not believers because we hope so. We're believers because we have confidence in the evidence that is there. We don't live by some mystical hope that, I hope and I hope and I hope and I hope that God is real, and I hope that when I die I get to go to heaven. There is evidence of who he is. God is and will keep his promise. That is what faith is. And by the way, this is why I want to tell you, because this is what Scripture says. I want you to see now in the rest of Hebrews chapter 11, this is what God does. I want to give you some examples of this just so you can know that this just isn't Pastor Dave's warped idea about what faith is. Because he goes on. He says in verse 2, this is what the ancients were commended for. What were they commended for? He then goes into this long list of people, right? These heroes of faith. And he says, by faith, this person did this. By faith, this person did that. And one of those was a man by the name of Abraham. Now, I want to ask you a question this morning. Before you came to church today, just I don't want to make you feel bad. But if you knew the name of Abraham before you came to church today, would you just raise your hands and let me see? Have you ever heard of Abraham before today? Okay, pretty much everybody in the whole sanctuary, right? That's going to come back in just a moment. I want to explain to you why this is so important. So he said to Abraham one day, and this is from Hebrews chapter 11. He says, Abraham, I want you to leave your home, and I want you to go to a place that you don't know. Wow, what's that? So he left home. Can I ask you a question? Why did Abraham leave home? Was it because he didn't enjoy his mom's cooking? Was it because his brother was wearing his clothes all the time and he was just ready to go? No. You know that's not true. He left home because God said, I want you to go to a place that you do not know, and I will lead you. That's the reason why, by faith, Abraham followed God. So he believed God's promise and acted on that promise. He believed in what God said, and he acted on that promise. Let me give you another one. You think that's the only one? It's full of those. A man by the name of Gideon was a man he was the original of the 300. You ever seen the movie The 300? Okay, so he's the original one of that, okay? So he is called by God. He's called to go to the Midianites and go to the valley and go to war with them. And this is not an easy thing because they were outmanned by 200 to 1. This was no small task. He was undermanned, underpowered, but here's the thing. God told him to go. Question is, do you know why he charged down that valley? Here's the reason why. Because God said, I want you to go do this, and I promise you, you will be victorious. Gideon went because he acted on the promise that God gave him. He said, I want you to go because this is my promise to you. By faith, Gideon did this. Let me give you another one. It's all full of it, all the way through Hebrews. Moses, who left Egypt with a price on his head, right? You remember that? When he got into trouble, when he took the servant and he killed him? So he flees Egypt, and God says to him, hey, Moses, I want you to go back to Egypt. Are you crazy? Why would you want me to go back to Egypt? I want you to go back to Egypt because I want you to deliver my children, and I promise you I will deliver them out of Egypt. Now, why did he leave? Why did he go back to Egypt? Because it was faith in believing that God is who he is and he will do what he says he will do. It's based on evidence. It's based on the promise of who God is and what God will do, because God will keep his promise. This is why fixing your eyes on him is so important. On what? On Jesus, on the promise of Jesus, not in what you think you want or you hope that you want. This is more than just personal, folks. This is his promise. It was in fact, let me just tell you, this whole thing about promise was a global thing. Now, remember I asked you the question just a few minutes ago. I said, hey, how many of you before you came to church today knew of this person named Abraham? So you all raised your hand pretty much, right? Almost everybody in the room raised their hand. Well, this thing was not just a personal promise that God gave, but the people of Israel knew that it was a global promise. Oh, I've got good news for you this morning. You may be confused right now, but you're not going to be confused in a moment. This promise goes all the way back to Abraham, the very moment that he came to Abraham. Look at what he did. This is Genesis chapter 12. This is 2,000 years before Jesus. This is 4,000 years ago for you and for me. This is what he said to him. This was a global promise, so that you know. Genesis chapter 12, look at this. Genesis chapter 12, verse 2. He says this. He says, I will make you into a great nation. That's what he told Abraham. Can I ask you, is that answer correct? Did God make Abraham into a nation? Absolutely he did. So there was a promise made, promise kept. He says, and I will bless you, he says to Abraham. Well, did he bless Abraham? Well, let me tell you, if God takes a man and he turns him into a nation, I think that he's been blessed. Don't you think so? So he was blessed. He says, and I will make your name great. Okay, so here's the question. 4,000 years later, we stand here. I ask you, how many of you know Abraham? And every single person in the room raises their hand. So my guess is that he has made his name great. Don't you think so? So it goes on. He says, and you will be a blessing. Now you need to understand, that's strange. A blessing to who? Because you're going to become a nation, and you're going to bless others. And look at verse 3. We'll get back to that in just a second. I will bless those who bless you, he says. And whoever curses you, I will curse. And here it is. Here's good news. And all peoples on earth, I love this, all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. All peoples. Not just some, but all. Now, you got to understand that when nations go in connection with other nations, it's not to bless them. It's to take what they have so that they can have more. But that is not what he says here. He says, and you will be blessed through you. All the peoples of the earth will be blessed through you, Abraham. Do you want to know what that blessing was? It was Jesus. Jesus came into the world for all people through the line of Abraham. That's the story of Jesus coming into the world. You know why we celebrate Christmas? It's because of that promise that was made to Abraham. See, this is so simple, folks. When we start talking about faith, what is faith? Faith is knowing who he is and knowing he will do what he says he will do. And God says, and I'll make you a great nation. You will be blessed, you'll be great, and you'll be a blessing to all people. The reason why you're going to be a blessing is because you're going to allow Jesus to come right through. And he's going to be Savior and Lord of your life. So back to the story, right? Okay, check this out. Verse 3. All these people, he says, all these people were still living by faith. And I love this. I just love the way it's even said in the scripture. All these people were still living by faith when they died. So they believed God was going to do something in the world and for the world through Abraham, and they didn't even see it happen. But yet they trusted in the promise of what God said he was going to do. That's faith. Now let me give you a couple examples. You're going to like this. Nobody thought, by the way, during that day, nobody thought they could faith God into doing something, okay? Nobody thought like that. Talk God into doing something. It's not that. It's not magic. It was that they simply knew that he could be trusted. That God could be trusted. Now let me give you just an example of perfect faith. This is way off track as far as Hebrews and Genesis, but I got to give this to you this morning. If you have your Bibles, I think it's worth even looking at it. So would you just take your Bibles this morning, turn to Luke chapter 5. Would you do that? Luke chapter 5, verse 12. I love this story. Luke chapter 5, verse 12. Jesus comes upon a man who had leprosy. Okay? Now, you got to understand, in that day, if you were a leper, you had a difficult life. I mean, you had to announce yourself when people came around. You had to stay a distance apart. You weren't allowed to live with your family. I mean, it was a hard life. It was not a good life. And here comes this leopard. Look at what happens. Verse 12. While Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. And of course, we don't grasp that. We don't understand it. Unless you've been in another country where it's not very common even today. It was a harsh thing. When he saw Jesus, this man who had leprosy, when he saw Jesus, he fell with his face to the ground and begged him. Look at what he said. Listen very careful to the words that this leper said to Jesus, this man who had leprosy. Lord, he says, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Did you catch that? Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Not, Lord, I believe that you will. Lord, I believe and I believe and I believe. In fact, I've got friends at home, Lord, and they're praying for me right now. And they're praying and they know, believing and believing that you're going to heal me. No, that's not what he says. Perfect faith says, if you are willing, he says, I think you can. Now, why would the leopard believe that Jesus could heal him? Why did this man with leprosy believe that Jesus could heal him? Why would he take the risk to walk right in front of Jesus and lay down right before him? Here's the reason why. He knew Jesus had healed other people. He knew what Jesus could do. He didn't go to Jesus because of faith. He went to Jesus because of evidence. He knew who Jesus was. And I love this. Jesus, verse 13, Jesus reached out his hand, which, you're not supposed to do that. You don't touch a man with leprosy, but that's what Jesus did. That's just the way he did things. Jesus reached out his hand and he touched the man and he said, I am willing. Jesus said, that's all the faith that I'm looking for, is that you know that I can, and you asked. You know that I can. So now, do you understand what I'm saying? Because now you see this picture, and he says, I'm not praying. I know I'm going to be healed. I know. He says, I believe you can if you will. And if you will, I can be healed. It's not that I know it's going to happen. I know you can. That's the hope. I'm hoping. And now it's up to your promise. If it's your choice. If it's your desire. Now let me tell you why many people resist this idea of what faith is, or this definition of faith. You know why that this is so hard for people to handle, to take on? Here it is. Write this down. It leaves God in control. Do you get it? Because now it's not about what you think you can do because of what you do. What you're really doing is you're leaving God in control. And can I just give you some good news today? God is in control. He is in control. I am so glad that 16-year-old David Hackney did not get all those prayers answered that he asked for, even though he cried out so hard and so long and asked God to do it. I am so glad that I did not get those prayers answered, because I wouldn't be married to the woman that I'm married to today. And I'd be driving a Porsche. A few other things would be going. Faith should never have been the basis of this. Faith it's not it. People this is on Media Shout. Let me just give this to you. People are abandoning their faith because we have signed his name to promises God never made. We're signing God's name to promises that he has never made. And then when it doesn't follow through, guess what happens? We lose faith. Well, what happened? Because I prayed and I got down on my knees and other people were praying too and it didn't happen. Is God not there? Is God not listening? Listen, you're signing God's name to a promise that he never made. What is the promise that he made? No wonder people fall away. No wonder why people struggle. Okay, I've spent 35 minutes setting you up for this next thing, and this is it. I'm now going to give you what you need to know. It's the one thing that you should walk away from today to understand. If you don't agree or want to hear anything else I've said, this is what you do need to know. This is, however, what you can put your faith in. And here it is. Romans chapter 5, verse 8 tells you and I this. But God demonstrated his own love for us in this, not while things are going well, not while you're good, but he demonstrated his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That while you and I were still sinners, Jesus Christ died on the cross for you and for me. What is your faith in? My faith is in that God is who he is, and God keeps his promise. And you know what that promise is? That he would give us his son. And his son would live and die and would be raised again so that you and I could live with him forever. It was settled on the cross. If there's one thing that you really want to know, is you want to know that there's something more than this. Of all the things that you could ever ask for, Lord, heal this person. Lord, please take away that struggle that they're going through. All the things that they could get given to them, all the promises that they could ask for that could be fulfilled. The one thing that you want more than anything else is to know where you're going. Because let me tell you, I think about my life right now, and I am almost 49 years old. I know that's young. But when I think about that, I think about half my life is over. Okay? I think how quickly these years have gone, and that means that if I were to live to be 100 years old, half my life is gone. And I know some of you are thinking, you think that's bad. You know, I get you. We don't want to talk about that. But here's what you can know. All the things that God has or has not done, and you've asked for this, and God, you've asked for that. You've said, Lord, please do this, please do that. Can I just tell you, the thing that you want more than anything else is you want to know that while you were still a sinner, that God settled that for you on the cross. That his love for us, you will never have to wonder about. His love for us is never going to be a thing that you need to be concerned about. That he loved you so much that he gave his son on the cross for you and for me. This is what we should never lose. This is God's promise to you and to me. This is our faith. Our faith. Will God do other things for you? Of course he will. God wants to do great things in your life. But God's promise, your faith is based upon something, someone who promised that he would do something, and when those two things come together, that's faith. It's confidence in knowing that what God says he will do, he will do. Beyond that, it's just ropes, and it's hidden formulas, and it's all the other things that we try to manipulate to get God to do what we want him to do. But can I tell you that at the end of the day, there's just the one thing. And it has always, can I just tell you, it has always been about just that one thing. It's always been about Jesus. And that's why the writer of Hebrews says, and by the way, if you really want to know what you need to do, fix your eyes on Jesus. Fix your eyes on him. Because at the end of the day, there's your faith. Your faith is an evidence of what you know God said he would do, and he did it. It's the reason why Abraham left and went to a place that he never knew, because God told him to. And God keeps his promise. It's the reason why Gideon went to war, because God keeps his promise. It's because Moses went back to Egypt, because he knows that God will keep his promise. And when God looks at you and he looks at me and he says, I promised you something. I promised you that I would give you life. And all you got to do is accept it. And here it was on the cross for you and for me. Folks, that's the best news you could ask for. Beyond that, does anything else really matter? Beyond that, is there anything else you really need? That's it. That's him. That's his promise for you and for me. He's so good. He answers all the questions without you even asking. Because all the things that you could ever want, it doesn't compare to that. To life. And to have life eternal. And every time there's a death, and every time there's sorrow, and every time that you can't understand why bad things happen to good people, and why babies die early, and why we don't understand, all those things are questions we don't have answers for. Here's what you know. Jesus died so that you could have life. Those things will never be a distraction to God. God's in control of that. Now it's just about you fixing your eyes on him. The pioneer and perfecter of what? Your faith. Of who you are. Would you stand with me this morning? so easy to get your eyes off of Jesus and look at other things and other things that you hold on to, and you think, oh, as long as this is there, it's all good. And at the end of the day, folks, it's never been about anything else but Jesus. And so this morning we close this series, and the altars are open, and maybe you have the courage, and maybe you just need to do it right where you're standing. But I promise you this, until the day comes that our eyes are fully focused on Him, you will wander, and you will think about other things, and you have questions, and you will be disappointed because those things that you are looking through, life experiences, that struggle that you went through, that bad experience, whatever it is, your fate, your karma, whatever it is that you use, until it is Jesus, you'll never have true hope. And even though you may not have all your answers, He answers the questions that are the most important. That's what you really want. That's what we all want. So if you want to pray this morning, the altars are open. And if you want to pray right where you are, you can pray there too. But oh, how important it is that you don't walk away today without understanding completely that once you take your eyes off of Jesus, everything else is fair game. It's so easy at that point to lose what you thought you would never lose, to walk away from what you thought you would never walk away from. And that's Jesus. Let's sing together this morning. Can I just ask this morning, as our time is approaching, if you just bow your heads this morning, as huge as this is, and it's huge, isn't it? I mean, how quickly, how easy it is for us just to focus on our circumstances or the struggle that we're going through in life, and all of a sudden our faith is based upon our circumstances, how good it is or how bad it is. And I know that it's hard, and I know there's some of you who are right there. And the reason why I know that is because we all find ourselves there from time to time. Life is just life. It's full of struggle. But He'll never let go. So this morning, with every head bowed and every eye closed, maybe there are some who are here, there's some who are at the altar praying, and as we close, I'd like to ask you just leave quietly out of the sanctuary. But for those of you who are here right now in the pews, maybe you say, Pastor, you know what? Man, I found myself there, or I know somebody who's there. Or maybe I've been thinking about it, because things aren't just lining up the way I thought they were, and I'm hearing this, and I'm experiencing that, and it's not easy for me. And if you say, Pastor, that's me, or that's someone I know, and I need prayer to just know how to deal with it. I need prayer to help them get back to where they need to be, or I need it for me. I need to get back. To fix my eyes on what my faith really is about. Should have always been about. It was what men were promised and died, and they were commended for that because they didn't walk away, they didn't wander, because they believed in what God said He would do, and He did it. And maybe if you're there today and you're struggling with that, maybe just say, you know what, hey, I'm willing to admit that, and I'm willing to say I need prayer for that. And if that's you, and you say, Pastor, just pray for me this week that God would give me the strength. And if that's you, would you raise your hand and just put it right back down, and I'll remember to pray for you. I see your hand. I see it. I see your hand. I do. I see that hand too. Yeah. And you know what? There's a lot more of us in this room that are right where you are. I promise you that. This last month, these last 2 months, these last 3 months, man, I tell you, it's been rough. There's been things that have happened you just never expect. You don't expect things like that to come up and just bite you like that, but it makes you think, makes you wonder. So Father, this morning we come to you, and we know, Lord, that you are greater than all of our fears. You're greater than all of our circumstances. And marriages and relationships and finances and all those things, Lord, together, they don't even come close to adding up to who you are. They don't come close to adding up to what you promise us. They're all temporary. They're all for this moment, in this life, this world right here, this lifetime that we have. But your promise, Lord, is forever. Your promise is settled already, and all we have to do is say yes. Say yes to you. Say yes to you and no to us. And to turn from where we are and walk in your wisdom and your understanding through the work of your Holy Spirit. So, Father, I pray for that, for all of us, that Lord, that our eyes would not be drawn away and that we not lose sight of the prize that's set before us, the prize that awaits us one day, the prize of hearing our Heavenly Father say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." That is most certainly enough. It's more than enough. So, Lord, we look forward to that day, and it will be worth it in the end. It will most certainly be worth it in the end. So, Father, as we leave this place, may your Spirit go with us and do, Lord, what only you can do. Remind us of your promise to us, that we would not forget what faith truly is. We ask it in the precious and the wonderful name of Jesus. And all God's people said, God bless you. Have a wonderful week in the Lord, will you?